How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today, I not only have one of my favorite Transformers creators, but also Andrew Griffith is joining us. Oh, I'm sorry, and John Barber. John Barber is here too, who I've previously interviewed to talk about that Conan book, The Art of Conan, or the Artist Edition. That thing is humongous, and I can't wait to see the finished product. But why don't you both tell me a little bit about yourselves first? Andrew, I had John on before, so why don't you go first, sir? Who are you? What have you worked on, and what do you do?
Sure. So I started working on Transformers. That was my first like professional comic work. I started doing movie tie-in stuff mostly. So my first gig was kind of like to help ink and do some fill-in pages on a like a prequel comic for was it Revenge of the Fallen, I think. And then, you know, they liked what I did on that. I did some covers for they reprinted the UK comics in the US. So the best UK covers, I did some of those for a while for IDW. And that led into doing they brought me on to do the art for a new series called Foundation, which was like a 4-issue series that was like a prequel comic to Dark of the Moon. Yeah. And John was the writer on that. So we kind of like hit it off. We worked well together, and all the fans seemed to like it. And then that led into doing the Robots in Disguise ongoing series. And then, you know, that lasted a long time. And John and I have always stayed in touch and worked together now and then on like the Bumblebee movie prequel. And so, yeah, like Transformers was kind of like my foot in the door. And I always wanted to work in comics. So it was great. And then I also, like, after that, I spread into doing other things, you know, like Micronauts, a little Star Wars. I was the lead artist like on the G.I. Joe comic for about 7 issues while I didn't have the license. So that was amazing because that was one of my first like fandoms. But yeah, I mean, like I've done a little Godzilla, different things here and there, but I've stayed steady working ever since like I first got that first gig on the Transformers stuff.
So then I have to ask Andrew, the obvious question is, how did you even get that gig? Like you said, you drew your first issue was that was it Revenge of the Fallen or?
Yeah, Defiance was the name of the series. Yeah.
Okay, how did you go about getting that as an artist? Like, was it a contest? Did somebody see your artwork on DeviantArt?
A little both. Like, okay. I went to school for art and stuff like that, but I settled into like design jobs. I got laid off, and I just sat down and like got married. Like, I got married, I got laid off. I had more time at home. I was drawing again. I started like posting more art online, DeviantArt, on Transformers fan group message boards, on the IDW message boards at the time. I took part in this project called Mosaic, which was like a 1-page fan comic. So, it was like a project that like a lot of people took part in. IDW even like printed some of those in the back of the comics for a while. So I took part in that, and then the people who organized that worked with IDW to make like a fan contest to be the next Transformers cover artist, and like 500 people took part in it. It was immense. And
500.
Yeah, and I won the first 2 rounds, first place. The third round, I got in the top 10, so I did pretty well.
That's really good.
Yeah, and I was amazed by that because I had only been drawing again for like 6 months, so I felt really chuffed by that, as I'd say in England. But yeah, so then I started getting noticed by people at IDW, like Chris Mowry, who's the letterer on our current book. He was working there in-house as like a designer, and he was kind of pushing me to people, showing me off to editors and stuff. And I got a little notice and feedback here and there. And then like one day, Chris Ryle just emailed me, is like, hey, do you ever draw movie Transformers? And I hadn't at that point, but I quickly did. So I did a few sketches and sent them off to him. And I didn't hear back from him for like a few weeks. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, we need help on this movie book. Would you be free to help like ink some pages? And then that turned into some fill-in pages, and it kind of built up from there. So
that is amazing. That okay, so as somebody that has been laid off before, and it's miserable, right? At first, in hindsight, probably the best thing that could have happened to you, but at that time it was like, oh, this sucks.
It was kind of weird. It was like a natural segue where just as like my unemployment and everything was running out and I should have had to get a new job, I was getting steady enough comics work that I could kind of keep going with that, you know? So it worked out really well for me.
Okay.
Timing wise.
And you have been drawing ever since. Comics, that is. Internal
comics and
sequential art
related
covers.
related things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you two started Robots in Disguise. You launched that, and then eventually that Robots in Disguise got dropped because I think there was a cartoon and there was a lot of confusion, maybe. So you guys have been working together for a while. And I know Andrew just went through and told a little bit about himself. What about you, John Barber, writer and co-creator of Signa? But what have you done?
Yeah, well, I was also, kind of, I grew up writing and drawing comics and stuff, or really into comics. What did I was doing web comics in the kind of late 90s, like the early web comics days. I kind of that somehow got, I don't know. I applied for I think I told the story before there. I applied for a random job at Marvel, got a job at Marvel, was working there for a while. While I was there, I met a fellow editor there named Andy Schmidt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Andy left Marvel and went to IDW. And after I left Marvel, Andy remembered that at one point Marvel was working with IDW doing a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover, and Andy really wanted to work on it because it was like, this is my one chance where I'm ever going to get to work on Transformers, and he didn't get it. Somebody else worked on the comic, but he remembered me walking by somebody. I think it was Alejandro Arbona. I think we walked by his desk, and I saw that they'd mislabeled Prowl and Ratchet on this like 2-page spread. The labels were by each other. And I like said that out loud. Andy saw that, remembered it, and was like, "Oh, John knows something about Transformers." And then after I'd left Marvel, he invited me to pitch on doing some of the movie Transformers stuff, which is what led to Foundation and led to me meeting Andrew. And that was and we were off to the races. And we it goes back so long. But the strongest memory I have of that is being in the delivery room when my daughter, who's now turning 13 in 2 months, she was being born, and I was in the delivery room as they announced Robots in Disguise with Andrew and I doing it, like it was at BotCon or wherever they announced it at. So I always have that, like, yeah, it's okay, but like exactly my daughter's age is how long we've been doing Robots in Disguise.
As I remember, we were even like chatting about it, like having an active conversation about ideas and stuff for it. And John's like, "Oh shit, I gotta go. My daughter was just born."
Yeah. Wasn't exactly.
Priorities.
If you've ever had a baby, or in my case, been in the room with someone having a baby, there's a lot of downtime. Like it's not all action. There's probably about.
I thought the same thing, John. And then my wife looked at me with that death stare when I was playing my Nintendo DS. I was like, "What? I'm not the one that's doing anything." She said, "Get over here and hold my hand." I think I held that woman's hand for 8 hours.
Yeah.
She did not want me having any fun while she was miserable, and I completely understand. So you, when you made that comment, I'm like, "Oh,
well, I don't mean to imply that I was having a lot of fun, but there was time to be like, okay, everybody's asleep and nothing's happening. I'm texting Andrew."
So yeah, you guys have been working together so a little bit over 13 years then.
Yeah, well, that was it. We'd done Foundation by then, so we had 4 issues under our belt.
I think Foundation was what, 2011 we started working on that, because I had just like bought my house and some other work I had ended, and like I'm like, so what do I do now? I got to get a job. And then like literally right then, as I was thinking that, Andy Schmidt called me up. The same Andy Schmidt called me up and said, "Hey, we're doing a second Transformers ongoing." And I was like, "Oh, maybe it's going to be like a movie series, like a movie continuity ongoing." I'm like, "That'd be cool." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks for letting me know." He's like, "Well, we want you to draw it." I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "It's G1." I'm like, "Really?" So he told me that John would probably be writing it and stuff. And he was like, "Well, we also have this other one with James Roberts writing." He's like, "Which one would you be more interested in?" And I'm like, "Well, I've got a history with John. We like working together." So I kind of had the choice there. So I turned down the famous More Than Meets the Eye to work on Robots in Disguise. So
you could have been something.
Never. Yeah, exactly. I could have been on Tumblr.
Oh, that's interesting. So you could have been the More Than Meets the Eye artist, right? Instead, you decided to go with Robots in Disguise. That's awesome because you're in partnership with John in the past.
Yeah. I like. It's not like they're like, they offered me that and then I turned it down. They're just kind of like figuring out the creative teams at the time. They asked me if I'd be interested in that, or not, while they were figuring it out. So I said I'd be more interested in working with John. Nothing against James at all. I love James, but just John and I have a good history together by that point.
Yeah, James did a lot of the research and stuff for the UK Transformers that you said you did the covers for. So he has a big understanding of these bots. I mean, obviously it showed with Phase 2 with you all. And I have to mention, I know I told John, my now 15-year-old daughter fell in love with Transformer comics at the age of 11. Like, I think she was 10, and she'll be 15 this year. Wow. But she got to pick out from my kingdom of comics, like anything she wanted, and she picked Transformers, and I was like, good choice. So she started with Phase 1, went through all of Phase 1, and when she got to Phase 2, she was like, she couldn't put the books down.
Oh, wow.
Was that her favorite?
Oh, yeah. Phase 2. Absolutely.
You know what? I do a lot of conventions. Oh, sorry.
No, I know what you're going to say, but you go ahead and say it.
I was going to say, I do a lot of conventions. And even recently, like this year, I've had a lot of people walk up to me that have just discovered these books, and they're really into like Robots in Disguise. I was at Emerald City, and this girl came up to me and said she flew there. I don't know where from, but she said she flew to the show just because she saw I was going to be there, and she was really into Robots in Disguise at the time. And then multiple other people that same day walked up, like all different paths of life and ages and stuff, saying how much they really liked the book. So it's amazing that like we did those 10 years ago, and they're still like inspiring people and still meaning something to people.
I'm a big Transformers fan, like from the days of the G1 show and the Marvel comics. But the most fun I ever had reading Transformers, and I think what I've always said, the best incarnation of Transformers was what you all did with the IDW era. That stuff is just, and I feel like a lot of people felt like that. Like, I come from the old school, and I know there's always the old guard. It's like, oh, not my Transformers, this is junk. But I felt like there was so much more like new people going to cons. I had never seen so much cosplay for Transformers than when people cosplayed as Phase 2 Transformers characters.
Oh yeah.
I had never seen that at a cons, like at TF Con or BotCon. It was crazy. It was a whole phenomenon. And still to this day, people are finding those books. That's why I'm hoping they do the right thing and print those, right? I don't want it to be a forgotten era of Transformers, because yes, of course we all want the classic Marvel stuff, and Skybound's doing their own thing, but there's this wonderful, beautiful era that got so many people hooked on Transformers for the first time that should never be forgotten.
Yep. Yeah. And the heyday of that was pretty wild. Like you mentioned, just going to TFCon or BotCon at the time, or whatever convention it was, and just seeing so many young fans come in dressed up as like, the Lost Light crew or characters from RID or whatever. It was just unbelievable, like how intense it was for a while there.
Yeah.
You guys were rock stars. So you enjoyed working with each other so much, you're still working with each other. Tell me what this is. What is going on with John Barber and Andrew Griffith? What are you two gentlemen working on now?
Yeah, do you want to do the
why don't you do it? We kind of go back and forth. Okay. John can do it.
So somewhere in that run of Transformers, Andrew had an idea for a limited series with was it Six Shot?
Six Shot and DevCon, who hadn't been in IDW comics at that point.
That's right. Sorry, I've heard you tell the story a million times and never listened. No, No. Sorry, I just forgot the name. Sorry. But yeah, it was a cool idea. But I knew what we were doing with the books, and that wasn't going to fit in with where things were going at that point. I can't remember. And I know that from Andrew saying it. I can't even remember when that was now, so I don't remember what was getting in the way of anything. But I liked the story, and I was like, hey, what if we like worked on something like this together? Because I think we talked about doing our own thing from like day one almost. I think when we met up at Comic-Con, at San Diego Comic-Con the first time,
Mhm.
we kind of talked about what we wanted to do for the first year or so, and then we're like, we should do our own book. I think we were talking, just I don't know. That's always been a thing I've wanted to do, right? So Andrew too, I thought, so
Yeah, I searched for that original pitch recently, and I found emails going back to 2011 of us talking about doing a creator-owned thing at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So we started talking about it. Life kind of got in the way. Other projects got in the way. Eventually, we came back and put together a pitch for what would eventually become Signa. It wasn't called Signa yet. Andrew drew like 6 pages of it. We had a whole like first issue plotted out, a whole pitch package put together. It didn't go through, and then life kind of got in the way again, so it kind of got sidelined again.
So your pitch, was it pitched to IDW at the time then?
Yeah, I think we did. I think that was by then I was back at IDW. I think it kind of came up to do it at IDW.
Okay.
And there were some notes on it. Or like it wasn't like I don't think we I mean I often find myself in awkward positions between writer John and editorial John, but I was editor in chief there at the time. By the time we were pitching it, right, Andrew? That's right, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember you called me up like when you got that job, and you're like, I just want to let you know it's not going to interfere. I can still do creator-owned stuff, I think.
But there was like a combination of just other stuff getting in the way, and then other stuff kind of behind the scenes. Just kind of left it on the table for a little while, and then eventually I was like, "Hey, I've got an idea that I kind of wanted to do something." We took chunks of what we originally had pitched, but really reworked it into something new and different. A lot of the same characters kind of appeared, but your roles changed, stuff like that. I mean, to give you an idea of what the time scale of this was, this is the part I always think was funny, is that when we first started, there were a bunch of different pieces that were influences to it. Some of it was even like 70s giant robot stuff. But one of the pieces was thinking that like, man, we both like Star Wars. What's really underserved is that idea of like after Return of the Jedi, the Empire would have been destroyed and there would have been kind of chaos in the galaxy, but they don't do a lot of storytelling in that time period. What if we did something in a post-revolution time period? And now it's like, I mean, there's 300 hours of Star Wars that are set in that time period. Like it's like, besides the Clone Wars is the most covered era of Star Wars.
Our original concept pretty much got made into The Mandalorian. So
yeah. by coincidence. So
so it got thrown out there into the cloud of ideas, and somebody grabbed it from there. Is that what happened?
I wouldn't suggest that. I just mean to say that like when The Mandalorian came out, we're like, wow, this is so similar to the tone and kind of story we had in mind, that we're like, we can't do that now because it would look like we're ripping
Oh,
yeah. Play up the Western parts, bounty hunter, post-revolution on a
wow, you guys took that so well. I would have been like, dang it, that was my idea.
Well, I mean, we did. Weirdly, we had Baby Yoda. Like, I don't know what we were going to do with that. Yeah, I know. No,
but it did have like a bounty hunter kind of character with like this going around with this like newborn kind of robot kind of character. It was like,
yeah.
So there were certain elements that were pretty similar.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the story of Lone Wolf and Cub and that idea has been there several times, right? You could. You could definitely take it into a whole bot idea and set in a Western style. That's actually a pretty cool pitch. So, what evolved from that then?
Well, like by the time we got back around to it, it was we were like the world had completely fallen apart. We were COVID had happened. Like everything was just it felt like such a shift tonally in the way life worked from those two times. And I think personally as well, like the difference between coming on to a new job, being editor-in-chief at IDW versus being in year 2 of lockdown and COVID and everything that happened to the company. A lot of changes and stuff had happened. Like not only were there the external parts, but there were the very internal parts of like this feeling of change and man, end times are here. So I think what I came back with, maybe, and I don't know if this is right, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is kind of a silly. I'll do this sometimes, but it's a silly thing for a writer to sometimes do, is that all I'll have is like some visual that I want to do. And I'm like, Andrew, what if there was just a big red sun taking close to the sky, about to, destroy all of civilization. And you had the people trying to live through that and trying to find a way out of that. And then I think we, Andrew and built up a lot of the story, and he and I, bounced ideas off of each other. It kind of built it up into this idea of what Signa is, which is a young scavenger named Ketna Vora, who is living on in a solar system. It's a couple hundred years in the future.
Mhm.
But from her time, 100 years ago, there had been a big war. During the war, something had caused the sun to go off of its regular sequence and turn into a red giant, swallow up some of the planets, and just kind of be threatening humanity. That these grandchildren of that war are the last generation of humanity. There's no faster than light travel. They can't just escape the solar system and go to some other world. And then she finds a mech from that war, and the mech talks to her, which she isn't expecting. And then it also suggests that maybe there's a way to fix things or to save things. But the question is, save it for who? Is the mech on their side, or is it mech on the side of who they fought the war with, which were these machine intelligences from a mining operation in the asteroid belt, which is a sprawling, weird way to describe the whole series. So sorry.
No,
You have an editor.
I'm giving the pitch. I'm digging the pitch. This is cool. And how? Okay, so then I got to ask this very obvious question: how much of this conversation did both of you like feed off each other before you go? Okay, let's get it down on pen and paper. I assume it's pen and paper. I don't know what you all use. But how much conversations took place? Like, if you could, it's crazy to think about, because you're talking about things that happened pre-2020, and how much of that led into actually writing the story down and getting it drawn. And how did you all even acquire a team of like colorists and letterer? I mean, people, right? So I assume that part was easy.
We watched Spinal Tap for inspiration.
It's a great movie.
But no, it was a lot of like Zoom calls. It was a lot of back and forth. Like every once in a while, like John said, there'd be periods of inactivity where like one of us would email the other one with some ideas, and the other one was like, "Hey, yeah, let's get back into that. Let's start talking about that again." Or John would write up like some 20-page backstory and like of this sci-fi universe thing, and send it to me, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" And then we could do this and do that, and I was like, maybe we could incorporate this other idea I had from years ago. And I'm like, I drew this character like 20 years ago that could be the basis of like our lead character, kind of still is, but it was a lot of back and forth on Zoom calls, and then after the call, one of us, often John, would like write something up and send it and see what I thought, and then I'd pitch an idea, and then he'd get a new idea from that. And like, for example, I do remember like the red sun thing being his idea. I remember him bringing that element into it, and I'd have other ideas and stuff too. It was very like collaborative, very loosey goosey in the terms of like, there wasn't like a set like format of how we did it. It was just a lot of discussion back and forth and talking about like hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi and different things we had read and been influenced by and inspired by, and like it was just a lot of like collaborative discussion over Zoom, really, that led to this. And doing new reiterations. Like there's been a few times where John had written like a huge backstory, like to build off of stuff that the reader would probably never see, but had to be there for us to build off of. And then that got changed.
Well, Andrew, that's what extras and back matter are for. And
yeah, exactly.
Deluxe hardcovers,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You'll be finding some of that. There's stuff we don't want to give away, but there'll be some of that in the Signa book itself.
And speaking of which, if the Kickstarter does well, maybe we can get into some of that, like stretch goals and stuff to have in the book. So,
Oh, let's talk stretch goals. Yes. How much longer is the Kickstarter going? How many more days do you all have? And
16 days, I think, something like that.
16 days, yeah.
Okay.
A little over 2 weeks.
So I have put the link, if you're watching this later, in the description of the video, and I am also putting it in the chat if you want to go and check out the book. Now, let's talk the basics of the actual book. The physical part of it. How many pages and how big it, like the dimensions of the book.
Yeah. It's standard comic size, but it's a hardcover. It's going to be there'll be physically 48 pages of material inside the hardcover. The story, the comic is it 36?
Is it?
Something like that, with the rest of it being kind of backstory.
30 and 35, yeah.
The rest would be like cool back matter stuff, design stuff, and then I think some tech spec type things to find out some of the things we don't mind giving away right now. There are definitely some things we want to like not have in like issue 1 that you find out about. But things like I think we were actually just kind of talking about this, that like we can give away how many millimeters the cannon is on Signa's back. Like that's okay. That's not a spoiler for later on. It's not going to turn into a full on, I think, Shirao kind of book where it's like like Appleseed or something where there's just 200 pages of tech specs.
Did you say Appleseed? The data book? Oh my god! Well, I love that book. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, hey, I've got a manga spinner rack right over there. It's got all my apple seeds on there.
Oh yeah, that stuff is great. Do you now, is this one book? Is this something that you all want to continue into a series of books? I know John is a big world builder and a big thinker ahead of, is that a word? Thinking ahead when it comes to stories, without giving much away, of course, or anything away. Yeah. And of course you can answer no, but yeah, do you both have plans to continue with the characters?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, this first volume is the opening of a 6-part story.
Okay.
We're well into further issues on that. Like Andrew did, I think it's, yeah, we can say this. I've said this other place. He took some time off to draw Godzilla for the past month or so, but we're barreling ahead on the rest of the Signa story arc, and we'd love to do more. We're happy if we get our the story we have here out, but there's definitely, like you said, there's more to do with the characters, and especially I think with the world. Well, no, I wouldn't say especially. As equally as with the characters, also with the world, there's some cool stuff we've sort of developed that we're just not going to get into in the backstory of the comic itself. You know what I mean? Like, which again, like some of that's like intentional because I mean, even going back to Star Wars again, like we grew up with Star Wars, but we grew up in the world where the Clone Wars was just a thing they mentioned, and you had to use your imagination.
Yeah,
it was.
You always heard about that. I love that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm just like that. You like wanting to know what Jabba the Hutt looked like so bad, and having to spend my entire childhood up to that point. I had known that there was Jabba the Hutt, and didn't see what he looked like until Return of the Jedi came out. Like that's just gone. Like, that's not part of that. That's not part of Star Wars anymore. You know what I mean? And it's cool because the other stuff that they have there is cool too. It's fun.
Yeah.
That there's 3,000 years of legacy of the Hutts now that you can dig into and find out about every single Hutt. But it's weird to think about that world where that wasn't what it was like. And we kind of want a little bit of that, where you're just kind of thrust into this world and we'll make mentions of things, but you don't,
I had forgotten about things like that because now we live in such a age of, I mean, I'm looking at my laptop right now, but I just pick up your phone and you're like, who is Jabba the Hutt?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can without even moving. Without even going online, I can find out everything about the Millennium Falcon here.
Oh, right. It's crazy to think about that particular time when the world building was already, the backbone was there, the ideas were there. We just hadn't seen it yet. It's pretty crazy, but I mean, that time did exist. and now it's like everything is so accessible.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
from the
Yeah,
public. So I'm excited for new products. You know, people always complain like, "Oh, can't we get something new?" You know, everything is Star Wars, and so I love when new ideas come together and we have a new property and a new story to tell. And both of you have been working on this for obviously quite a number of years.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing you guys haven't told me that I'm going to ask, tell me about these tiers for your pledging, because you guys have some really, because both of you have been in the industry for a long time together, decades, I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But you have some really good tiers in here, you know, besides the book. So can you tell me about the different tiers that you all have for the books?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, who would be better for that? You think? I don't know. Either one of us can explain, but
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. So yeah, I mean, we try to get, first of all, a good variety of options. You know, I mean, you have like a digital version, you have the hardcover, and like I think part of the reason we're doing this hardcover is we wanted something special to have as a Kickstarter, because like John said, we do plan to have more issues and a story to tell later on, but we wanted something special for the Kickstarter. And then we have so many, like, we've been so lucky to have really good creative artists do covers for us that we wanted to have those available as options. So you can get a Tom Scioli cover or a Christy Zula cover or Alex Milne and Josh Perez. If you're a Transformers fan, you know who they are. And then also, like, a lot of people like to get commissions from me. So you can get a commission there. That'll help with the book too. What else do we have there? I should have pulled it up, I guess.
Okay, yeah. I thought if you volunteered, you'd at least have it open.
No,
there's a really good this is the one that stood out to me, and Andrew, I love your art, so the original sketch is an amazing tier. But the one that stood out to me are the original pitches.
Yeah.
And the Robots in the Skies 4 experience is sold out.
Yeah.
Do you guys have to act out the issue? Because that would be so awesome.
We had 2 tiers, and one of them is still remaining for Transformers fans that really want a one of a kind experience. But we'll take the original pitch the original pitch that I wrote for what became Robots in Disguise. Obviously, I don't have the original printout of it because there was none. It was all digital. I mean, it was a file, Word file. But I'll print it out for a physical copy. It'll be autographed, maybe just hand annotations on there, or definitely some hand annotations. I don't really know how much there is to put onto it, but there'll be something on there. Plus, it's original, they're the original art from some of the concept sketches that Andrew did when for his part on launching Robots in Disguise. And then we've got a Zoom call with the two of us. I was hoping for a tier where I wouldn't have to talk to Andrew on Zoom. I would have bought that, but no, I'm totally kidding. No, we'll do a call and talk to you about Robots in Disguise or Transformers or whatever we want to do. So
at any time, like if somebody's like, I need a bedtime story.
Yeah, like 3 a.m. That's ideal. This
is amazing. I love it.
I might be dropping my kids off, and you might get to talk to some of the other kids at my son's preschool. Some of them are very into Transformers as well. You might have something to talk about.
I think that's a really cool tier, man. I love it. And then you mentioned being editor, and one of the really cool tiers for people that are trying to break it into comics is you have a tier for checking out portfolio, so doing a script and portfolio review.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the one that Andrew was bidding on, that to try to not talk to me on that one. That was his version of that one. Like, oh geez, I don't need that. But no, I'll sit down again over Zoom. Conceivably, I don't think we have it on there, but if you were at San Diego Comic-Con, we could meet up or something. It'd be there's conceivable. If you're my next door neighbor, I can come over, but we'll definitely do it over Zoom, whatever kind of format.
Not meeting at a sketchy parking lot at 3:00 in the morning.
Right. No, I'll be taking that call about the pitch at 3 in the morning. So I'm not going to be able to go.
No.
I can't.
That's right.
I have gotten Zoom calls from him from places like that, though.
sketchy parking lots.
Yeah, like with construction in the background and like
Gosh, yeah. Oh, that was classic. When we were really getting this thing going, we had a call with Nate, who's the publisher. Nate and I met up. We were like, oh, we'll meet up in La Jolla. We'll go to a coffee shop. It'll be nice and peaceful. And there's just all there is construction and Wi-Fi that's not working. And it was just like an hour of us trying to get on the phone with Andrew. I forgot about that. Yeah, we won't do that.
Kind of Hollywood though. It felt like they were on like a movie backlot with like sets being built in the background.
Yeah, it was a parking lot in La Jolla. Yeah, we've got that. We've got what are the? I guess
there's also the retailer set too for people that are watching that are retailers.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, is that the only way they're going to be able? People are going to be able to get it through their retail shop, or will this be available after the Kickstarter?
The only way to get this hardcover Kickstarter version of the comic is through Kickstarter or through the retailer tier at Kickstarter. The comic, we do have full-on plans to release the series into comic book stores, but it'll be not in this deluxe format. It'll be not with the exclusive cover that we've got here. So yeah, for this version of it, yes, but we do want to get Signa out there to people, beyond this.
The hardcover version reminds me of like the European releases, right? Like we've become accustomed here in America to the monthly floppies, but in Europe, we have all these graphic novels that come out when the creators are done. I think that's really cool. It's a very unique way. I think honestly, Ed Brubaker loves that format so much. That's the way he releases comics now. It's like you get a graphic novel once or twice a year, and that's it. You don't get the single issues hardly anymore. So I think some of the American creators have taken on that formula because it's worked so well over in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of thing works really well on like in a Kickstarter format where it's not like it's not the waiting years to get a 300-page graphic novel. It's a shorter like a shorter experience, but it's in a format that is sturdy, looks nice on your shelf, and is a I don't know, if you're a collector, a collectible item, and if you're not, just something that's hopefully a pleasant reading experience. I know the format's going to be a pleasant reading experience. Hopefully you like what's inside.
One other thing, another tier we haven't mentioned too is it's been pretty popular. We even opened up new spots for it. Is getting drawn into the book. So this first issue is done and ready to go. So it wouldn't be in this issue, but it will be in a future issue. So you can have a chance to actually appear in the book and have your likeness show up. So a lot of people have liked that so far.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Now you said the first issue is done. That means it's getting ready to go to the printer. Is that correct?
Yeah, all the comic part of it's completely done. I think there's I think somebody found a comma that we missed, so we're like a typo away from like that, like that part being done. The back matter stuff is we've got material for it, but that needs to get completed. That's the only thing left to do. That's yeah. There's not going to be you're not going to be sitting around for 6 months waiting for us to finish the comic, is what I'm getting at.
When is the book due out then? Like when people kickstart this, because people always get excited when it comes to these type of projects, and of course you can't foretell what's going to happen in the future. It could be a ship, hopefully nothing bad happens, but things out of the control, right? But yeah, when do you all foresee people getting this into people's hands?
Oh, it should be oh man, don't. I mean, I'm trying to do the math. I should actually know that, I guess, but would be late summer. I'm thinking of like shipping times and stuff like that more than anything else.
Okay.
I think that's right. We don't. We do know. We absolutely know what the printer is. It'll be less time. Sorry. Yeah. No. Again, there's no. It's just a matter of putting the files together and getting it sent out and printed. So shouldn't be a long wait.
So what made you guys go the Kickstarter route? Just out of curiosity.
One, it was something that I'd been thinking about for a while, in that, like Andrew and you were saying, there's fans of us from Transformers, and there are people that hopefully really liked what we did and would want to come see what we did beyond that. There are going to be some readers who we had that were just into Transformers. Okay, that's fine. But there's going to be some people that hopefully liked what we did and want to follow us over there. And Kickstarter in 2024 seems like a good way to reach fans. Like, this wasn't a setup where we weren't going to make the comic. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a make or break on making the comic. The comic was done. We made it. So it was a matter of trying to get it into people's hands and get word out about it, which can be as hard as anything these days. So that was a big part of it. The other part was we're doing this with Pug W, Pan Universal Galactic Worldwide, who also do the Conan book. Our publisher is Nate Murray, who used to run or used to do a lot of stuff at IDW Limited. So he was sort of used to running Kickstarters for that and for games at IDW. So he has a big background on it. And the idea was to kind of Pug W had existed as an entity, kind of doing stuff behind the scenes on a lot of things for a couple of years now. And this year we were really trying to, with the Conan book and with Signa, kind of trying to roll out, here we are, here's what we're going to be doing. So it was sort of part of that plan of here's the first original comic from Pug W. Then then the same thing I said before, getting into Kickstarter just gets it into people's eyes and hands in a way that is harder these days, just with the amount of stuff out there, like the amount of the fact that we're in a place where there are more people probably casually reading comics than have ever done it before is great. But that means that there's probably less people that are like I am, that are like a just massive hardcore comics fan, and they go to the store and just want to see what the good comics are now. There are people that like their giant robot stories, so here's one. People like science fiction stories. Well, here's one. But they're probably more likely to be able to be just as happy reading a novel or a comic book or a TV show or a radio play or whatever, a podcast.
A radio play. I like that.
So I don't know. That's sort of the philosophy about it.
No, it makes sense. And honestly, with so much, since 2020, a lot has happened within the comic book industry too, including the different distributors we have.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see the route a lot of independent creators have gone, because it's hard to get a spotlight now. It used to be Previews magazine, and that was pretty much it. And now it's PRH, and now it's Lunar, and now it's Diamond as well. So I've seen a lot of creators actually. Hell, I've seen big publishers go into the Kickstarter route or crowdfunding route, right? Like Dynamite and Boom Studios themselves have done that and have had really successful Kickstarters. So it's really cool to see people that have worked on projects that have had a huge fan following, build this and fund their projects. I think it's really cool. It says a lot about, well, both of you for sure, right? Like picking the right partner to work together on a comic book and never burning bridges, because I assume the people that you have on your team were all people or colleagues that you worked with in the past.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we asked that question before.
We skipped right by that, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's okay. I brought it back. That's what I do.
Just a little sidebar here, real quick. I was going to say it's also a model that's very familiar for like toy collectors. If you look at like what Hasbro Pulse does and everything for, like crowdfunding big projects that,
I am very familiar with the Unicron Hasbro.
Right. Obviously, Hasbro's going to be still putting out toys one way or the other, but for like a special new project to get people excited about it, raise capital and stuff, it's a good thing for a crowdfunding thing to do. But as far as a creative team, they're both people that you'd worked with Rhonda before, John, right? I had on a Turtles cover.
Yeah. Rhonda Pattison, the colorist. I mean, I knew her from Turtles. I mean, I wasn't like the Turtles editor. That was Bobby Curnow, but she colored Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for I think all of the IDW run and wrote some of it as well. So yeah, I was super excited to get to work with her on it. She does a lot of, like, all of Sam Keith's stuff too. She did the recoloring of the Max, and then his newer stuff as well.
Yeah, everyone on this creative team has done some writing. So if there's ever redundancy, John's the one that's got to sweat first. So
yep, exactly. And then Chris Mowry is our letterer, and I might have even said this when I was on here last time. I completely forgot Chris Mowry did not letter Robots in Disguise with us at all. He lettered one issue of it. I knew Sean Lee lettered the beginning of it. I knew Tom Long lettered the end of it. I was 100% convinced that Chris Mowry was we've both known Chris for so long that he was part of our creative team, and no, he wasn't. But we still like having him around.
He did write that Defiance series that my first job when I came into ink and stuff.
Yeah.
He wrote that, and then he also wrote Reign of Starscream, which technically was my first comic book gig. I wrote some character profiles in the back of that book.
Yeah.
So technically, that was my first published comic work.
Yeah.
So we've worked together a long time as well.
Yeah, and this isn't a thing of like me like not knowing who the letterer was. This is like I was working in the office with all of those guys, and I even told Sean this weekend, and I'm like, man, I forgot Mowry didn't letter that. He's like, oh, he didn't? You know, like even Sean, who did letter it, thought Chris Mowry lettered it.
That's fun.
When you both attend cons, has it been the norm for a while that the Transformers comics are the ones that most people want either signed or what most people want to talk about with both of you?
Yeah, the majority of it. I mean, it's amazing to be reminded of how much we have done. I'll have people come up with like a stack, like this tall of comics that I'm like, wow,
that guy. Well, because my point was, I know you all have done so much that I'm so effing jealous of the things that you both have had to just a part in. I mean, between both of you, it's like it's my entire childhood. It's Spider-Man, it's X-Men, it's the Punisher, it's Mask, it's Micronauts, Visionaries, Transformers. I think Andrew even did you do Highlander?
I did a cover for Highlander. One of my highlights
Godzilla
was getting to work on the G.I. Joe book, and also getting to write and draw some Star Wars, and we both got to work on Star Wars a little bit. So it's been amazing what we've been able to take part in.
G.I. Joe, Bill and Ted, right? John, that was you?
Yes.
Yeah. Back to
the Future with Bob Gale.
Yeah.
You guys got to play with my entire and yours as well, I'm sure, right? Yeah. So it means a lot more to you. But that's amazing. So I was curious when you go to shows if that's what most people are like. Oh my god, I love what you did in Transformers.
I'll have to bring up the covers I did for Back to the Future to sign them.
Yeah.
But usually it is Transformers. Like six times out of 10 it's Transformers, and then 4 times out of 10 the other stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There was especially when the Back to the Future stuff was coming out there. There would be a fair amount of Back to the Future stuff too. Yeah, the big difference I found with Back to the Future and what do you call it, Bill and Ted, is that you get paid for the work you do on Back to the Future.
Anyway, do you guys? Obviously, you miss working with each other.
We haven't had
one away.
Yeah.
We're still working with each other, so I wouldn't say we miss. I mean, I wouldn't say I've been missing it, Bob. Yeah.
No, even when we did have a lot of years where we weren't working together, but we were still
in touch,
close enough on a lot of that stuff. Like it didn't. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you stayed on Transformers, John.
Yeah, and Andrew would pop in here and there. Like it wasn't
he would
on from Transformers, even though you're doing other stuff. Even when
I was doing covers on Optimus Prime. I did some fill-in pages on Optimus Prime. I did some fill-in pages on like Lost Light and stuff. So I think you were editing Lost Light, right?
Yeah.
And then so we were always like kind of around, and then every once in a while we'd check in and poke our heads in about this, and so it was always kind of like staying in touch.
Yeah. Was it our I gotta ask, was there ever a rivalry between the two, Lost Light and the Robots in Disguise? Or I'm not Lost Light, but More Than Meets the Eye and Robots in Disguise, especially when the series first launched?
No, we were always like the redheaded stepchild, you know. So, we knew it. We knew our place. No, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't say it's a rivalry, but like most people that read one, I think would read the other.
Oh yeah.
Like I get people that come up to me, they say, "I love Robots in Disguise. I'm reading it right now," but I'm assuming they're also reading, you know, More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light. So I don't know, John. You were on the backside of things. You have better answers than I do for that, I guess.
Well, no. I mean, it's funny because like when how did it work? Like I got to pitch on what became Robots in Disguise, and then I got the gig, and I think James had already been locked in. Like he was he'd written a 2-issue arc called Chaos Theory that was sort of setting up what he was going to do later on. Which I don't think when he wrote that, I don't think they knew that there was definitely going to be more, but he was in place when I got in place. And I hadn't read anything by him until I got the job. And then I read, like, he wrote the script for the Last Stand of the Wreckers that Nick Roach wrote or plotted and drew. And then that's a great comic, right? Like I read that and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So then James and I started talking, and we were oh, you drew some of that, right?
I inked some of that.
Yeah. And then we James and I were talking, and as we were figuring out what we were going to do to go forward, we were definitely working together to make a coherent universe. You know, we were like, we'll do this one issue together. You know, what became the Death of Optimus Prime. We'll write that one, and then our 2 stories branch off, and we'll have these like places where we're intentionally touching base with each other. There were a couple like similarities that we had in our pitches, and we're like, why don't we just lean into that, and we'll have a bar in each one of these. You know, like that'll be a thing that each series has, like a drinking establishment type bar, not a like ballet bar or something. But then I remember both of us being nervous when Andy Schmidt left, because we'd both been hired to do the series, but he left IDW and started working at Hasbro. And like I started interviewing for that job, to take Andy's job. But I don't think James knew about it. And then I remember like doing a Zoom call with him or something, or whatever we had in those days, Skype call, and being like, okay, I know who the editor is going to be, James. And he was like, uh-oh, you know, like, 'cause it could be somebody coming in and just cleaning house, you know? Yeah. So it was, we were all on the same page, you know what I mean? We're all on the same side. There was like, oh, thank goodness, you know, it's somebody that's sympathetic to what we're doing, you know, because he's doing it. So, I mean, I was always editing the More Than Meets the Eye series, so I couldn't, you know, I had the one I was writing that I wasn't editing, and the one I was editing that I wasn't writing. So it was, I don't know. I always did want to play up that there was a rivalry, but because of my like staff role at IDW, it would seem really a dick move to do that, you know? Yeah. There's a part where I wanted to be like, you know, like
then when you became the editor, you could have made it so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, have that like, kind of kayfabe of like, yeah. But no, I think we were better off just being, you know, getting to work together. I mean, we co-wrote a bunch of stuff, and then when Marguerite came in and was doing the Windblade, and then Till All Are One, you know, I loved working with her too. You know, on the writing side.
Oh man, there were 3. Oh my god, that was like,
I forgot to. That
was some great times to be a fan, and I'm sure a creator too. I can only imagine. So I don't know if I know this or not. I don't think I asked you the last time, but since both of you were here, I don't even know if you can even talk about it, but did it feel like, or did it come to a natural end, that particular era of Transformers, before they relaunched it again? And how did that decision even come about? Like, okay, we've told every story we could with Phase 2 and Phase 3, or what they dubbed Phase 3, which is like the Hasbro verse. Yeah. Let's start over with the Crisis on Infinite Transformers.
Pretty much.
The Unicron story, right? Like, let's end it with that.
Yeah. So I had left IDW by then, so I think I was just just writing it, but from my so James had a story that was pretty solidly laid out from the beginning on More Than Meets the Eye. Like he kind of had a here's as far as he's plotted out. Here's an ending. And the stuff shifted and changed over time and got compressed and stuff. But he more or less, I think, stuck to that plan. When I launched, or when I pitched Robots in Disguise, I pitched like a year's story, a 12-issue story, and then I was like, I'm gonna pitch a 13th issue because I bet I'm gonna run out of room. Also, I want that 13th paycheck. So I like that was my big plan. But once they launched, actually around the time that they were, before it had come out, but after we had finished a few issues, the New 52 launched at DC. And I think, I don't even know if we've ever really talked about this very much, Andrew, but like there was an internal suggestion that floated around IDW of like, well, we should just cancel all the Transformer stuff and do a New 52 and just start over and not have all this continuity baggage. Because our story is just directly picked up from the previous story, like it was all
it was a continuation.
Then once the comics came out, they like sold out immediately, and they sold pretty well, and not Daniel Warren Johnson Skybound well, but they sold pretty well, and we so then it was like, okay, we're safe, we're gonna keep doing this. And so then it was like, okay, well, we need to, from my point of view, it's like, well, I need to figure out Andrew and I need to figure out what happens in year 2. So that was, I think, the first time we met. We were like talking at San Diego Comic-Con, and that's where we kind of, the stuff Andrew wanted to do, and that's where we kind of brought in Marissa Fairborn and going back to Earth and all that kind of stuff.
Whose idea was Thundercracker?
Well, I remembered he was always my favorite Transformer, at least as a Decepticon. So I do remember saying that. I don't remember if John had an idea to use him before that or not, but I do remember saying I'd like, especially if we're going to go back to Earth, I want to see what Thundercracker's up to, because he had been left behind there. So like, I definitely wanted to focus on him. So
yeah, I love that story. If you're watching this and you don't know what Thundercracker's doing on Earth after the big wars ended, he's hanging out with a dog and
then one of us, I think,
writing scripts. Go ahead, Andrew.
No, that's okay. I remember like one of us, I think, was like, yeah, he's probably like sitting in some cabin watching all the TV he can, and I think John was like, yeah, maybe he has a dog, or it's like it was that kind of thing. It was just like brainstorming, like.
And whose dog was it? I think it was somebody's dog, right?
Oh, it was my dog. Actually, here I still haven't framed this and put this up yet, but it's still in hand. So this is a page of original art that Andrew sent me after my dog died.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, it's sad, but yeah, it's Buster. Was based on Charlie, my dog. Hey,
my daughter just wants to come and say hello. And
hi.
Are you the Transformers fan?
She's the Transformers fan.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well,
we're heading to TF Con in Canada this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to go to that, so I might see.
Are you? Awesome. Awesome.
Oh,
we will have to stop by and say hi and chill out. Yeah, this is John Barber and Andrew Griffith. I know you know who they are, but just okay. Hello. Did you want to say something?
I really like your stories.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. I'm glad you. That was awesome. Yeah, your dad had told us about you reading them, and that's super cool.
So the dog was based on his dog, the one that hangs out with Thundercracker.
Yeah.
That was one of our favorite parts. Like we bonded over that, and we were big fans of that era. Oh, give me a kiss and I'll love it.
I'm actually still used to seeing Charlie laying on that chair back behind John. It's kind of weird not to see Charlie snoring back there.
Yeah, she was be very loud on all of my Zoom meetings for years. But full credit to Mike Costa, because he had brought Thundercracker to Earth and then had him watching. It was like a Nurse Jackie analog. I forget the name of the show now. But he was watching this TV show, and then I think we just what Andrew said, and I was like, oh, that'd be fun if. I remember walking over to Carlos Guzman, our editor's desk, and being like, if we get to Earth, Thundercracker's gonna have a dog, and you just thought that was funny, and then it turned out we did that. But yeah, no, Thundercracker, that whole I don't know. That was one of my favorite pieces to write.
Yeah, so many memories of those particular stories.
Yeah. Once we were on Earth, just to answer your question. There's some issues where I think it maybe becomes clear that story wise I wasn't sure where things were going to go. There are a few issues where I felt like I didn't know there wasn't the drive that there was in the first 12 or 13 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember one day just having this idea for what became I think I had the title too. I think it was we would do All Hail Optimus, which is one of the concluding stories of that run.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And where Optimus basically annexes Earth and to be part of Cybertron's alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, and then this happens. There's the whole Shockwave story, and then that's the end of the series, and then I'm done. So I had that idea of here's where it ends. Here's where I want to come off of it, and that timing wise synced up pretty well with where James was. And then I guess internally at IDW and Hasbro, they wanted to reboot and just kind of have a cleaner start for it. So James and I had both had the idea that when we got to the end of the story, assuming we left, somebody else is going to pick up the reins and just carry on with the characters after that. It wasn't going to be it wouldn't have been a definitive ending. And it still really wasn't. There's still hints that there's stuff continues on after then. Life continues for everybody. But it all dovetailed pretty well into the idea of having this final storyline, and then that became Unicron. But sorry, this other question pop up. Do we have other projects?
Yeah, somebody was asking, if Dark Knight's asking, do you guys have any projects beyond Signa that you will be doing together?
We've kind of talked, nothing specific. I mean, we both, at least, I mean, I'm assuming John does, but I have ideas for other creator-owned things, and kind of half jokingly, I've messaged John once in a while, but hey, we should do something like this or do that. I think we could, but for the foreseeable future, I think this is what we're focusing on. There's nothing concrete, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, I think at least through, I would say probably, next year, this is what we're doing together. Right?
This is what
we finish Signa. I'm happy to do another thing with you, but you've got Andrew is a good writer all on his own, and all the good parts of the art are me. I mean, I don't mean to. No, sorry.
And the thing about Signa is even if we wrap up the main storyline, we have ideas about where it can go after that. If this is a successful thing that people enjoy and want more of, I think we can very organically come up with pursue the ideas that we have that it could go other directions. So
there's a question here about IDW stuff. Excited for Signa. If it wouldn't be too much of a spoiler, any plans to revisit themes of autonomy and issues of violence and hierarchy itself, with Optimus and RC and other characters? If it's too spoilery, I would be curious about hearing about previous thought process from the IDW stuff.
One thing, before you get into that real quick, I do want to point out that if you liked what we did with that kind of stuff in RID and More Than Meets the Eye and that period of Transformers, Signa might be for you, because it reminds me a lot of the kind of themes and ideas we were pursuing then. But then, yeah, I'm sorry, John, if you want to get into
No, that's really. I mean, I think this isn't even so much spoilerly as the stuff that I worry about, boring people who aren't super into the series already, or the stuff that isn't going to make sense if you haven't read it. But in our story, where humanity is at has a certain power structure that exists that becomes very much a focal point of the series as it goes on.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of Damocles vaguely hanging over everybody, that these machines fought a war with Earth, definitively won, and then disappeared 100 years ago. and could show up at any time, and maybe have, which is a question that comes up in the book, I guess, or a thing people don't believe Ketna about in this first story. So yeah, all of that, all those sort of power structures, relationships, going back, maybe not millions of years in this story, but hundreds of years, 100 years. Yeah, absolutely, that all comes into play. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, like that with Transformers, that was, I don't know, it all kind of emerged naturally for me.
Mhm.
I mean, like really, when we first started off, the main story was for me was like what happens after you win the war, how do you win the peace, and like Cybertron had been sort of reset, and the civilization part of it had been stripped away, and there was sort of that how do you build Deadwood in the middle of this this sort of wilderness, like what are the logistical problems, and how do you turn that into a dramatic robot story. And then I mean the other big pieces that I think are always there that in Signa and in Transformers are the ideas of empire and wrong, like generational wrongs, like wrongs that happened in the past that can't be righted. And I mean, I think that comes from living on planet Earth in the 21st century, is seeing the effects of various empires over history, and these things that have happened to people that can't forgive and become cycles of violence, either on a micro level of like one person or a macro level of the whole world.
That doesn't sound familiar at all to the world right now.
Yeah. But those are definitely some of the same themes that we're kind of hitting in on this. Not so much out of like, hopefully we'll be approaching them in different ways, dealing with like how faith plays into that sort of thing, and what roles politics and how all of that interacts with people just wanting to get on with their lives.
Yeah. We didn't talk about this, but just in case people are watching or listening and didn't see the link to the Kickstarter, are these available to be shipped overseas?
Yes. Yeah, I think basically, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it now. I know for a while there were check in if it's something that there comes. Leave a comment if you're trying to order it and there's a problem with sending it to your country. There are a couple places where it's virtually impossible to send things to, due to like customs and stuff like that, or like, I'm sorry to all of our North Korean friends, but we're not going to be able to ship to North Korea. Or
the entire country, goodness.
Well, I don't think they accept mail from San Diego.
Yeah. I think that's out of your hands.
Yeah. But basically, yeah, we'll ship it. Some of it might be kind of expensive, but we're not trying to make money off of the shipping.
Right. I was going to say, if you absolutely can't get it delivered to your country, you can always get the PDF option too, if you want to enjoy it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That we can absolutely ship.
They're just thanking you for your time to answer the question.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, that story about Buster and Charlie was really touching. I thought so too. Anyway, my daughter came in from school right away. She had been watching on her phone and texting me going, "Oh, is that John Barber?"
Yeah, that's great.
So she came running downstairs, and right at the time when you were talking about your pup. And,
well, like as far as like what went into like the themes and stuff of like the Transformers at the time, I think all of us involved at the time not only had grown up with like Transformers and stuff, but we all saw it as something that there's no reason it can't be just as engaging and thoughtful as any other sci-fi universe, like we're all into like history, and John said current events, and like just the interplay of like sociological factors and what's going on with like identity and stuff, and like we're all like tied into that kind of stuff, and you want a story to have depth and meaning. And even if like at that time I was just on the art, I was still looking at like real world references and like getting inspiration from. I was even getting inspiration from like TV shows, like John mentioned Deadwood. So when I was building Comic-Con and what it would look like, and just even like how often you'd see the same person passing by in the background, and how crowded the streets would be, and what kind of activity there'd be on the streets. I was looking at like Deadwood and Rome and different shows like that, and because like you can read it in a book, but what does it actually look like? So I was kind of looking at shows and movies that had similar kind of world building as inspiration. So that was funny that John mentioned Deadwood.
It's a great show. I mean, it needs to be mentioned. Now, my personal question, because I'm taking up so much of your gentlemen's time. Thank you so much again for being here.
Oh, yeah.
Who was your favorite character to write and draw, of course?
For me, Starscream was like really a favorite, and like early on, I'd pitched the idea of Starscream, like kind of trying to become the leader of Cybertron early on, and I think Andy had a note of like, what if he's really good at it? Like, what if he's really good at being a politician? Instead of being the sort of sniveling coward he'd usually been portrayed as up to that point. I mean, not all the time, but that was sort of the overwhelming take on him. So like that idea of just having this guy that was just trying to grab power with no moral center was fun to write. Margaret, I think you took him in a different direction and made him have a little bit more of a soul, which was cool too. But he was a lot of fun to write. And then RC and Prowl were my other big ones. RC was definitely a character that I liked that she would say things that nobody else would, and it was sometimes she'd just say the things that I was thinking or that people were thinking. And then Prowl, just because he was I don't even know if I've ever said this. One of my big influences was Avon from Blake 7. Of just this guy who was basically a good guy, but he would bend rules and break rules to get the good things done, and that was sort of how I took Prowl. And then when I was writing Optimus Prime, I really liked writing Optimus Prime, and I think I've said this a few times, but my big influence on writing him was imagining it was Avery Brooks from Deep Space Nine, Captain Sisko. That was a big influence on my take on Optimus Prime, but those four are probably my favorite. Aileron as well, and Buster and Thundercracker and Marissa.
Oh man, Prowl and RC were two of the most complex characters in that series.
Yeah,
I mean, those are great, obviously great choices. You wrote them. What about you, Andrew? Who were your favorites to draw? Who did you not like drawing? Who was like, oh my God, there's so many pieces to this character?
Is it a 1-to-1 ratio of the characters I liked writing that he didn't like drawing?
No, I'm trying to think. Like, people always ask me that, who's your favorite Transformer to draw? And like, I always say like, when I do have a favorite, they quickly become my least favorite to draw because I end up drawing them a lot. And like, I kind of like drawing Prowlvastator, even though he was complicated. Just
yes,
I like the big chunky like weird proportioned kind of guys. I don't know, like I did like drawing Prowl and RC despite how complicated I made Prowl's design. Like it's funny too because I always saw Prowl as sort of like Cyclops, and I saw RC as sort of like Ninja Psylocke, and Wheeljack was kind of like Beast. So they kind of had like X-Men analogs for me, a lot of those characters. But I don't know, like Wheeljack was fun to draw, like, but also hard to draw because John would write panels like Wheeljack turns to the camera and winks, and I'm like, he doesn't have a face. How does he smirk? How does he wink? So
you did it. You were fine.
No, it wasn't wink. It was worse than that. It was like he smiled or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Like,
he smiled with his eyes.
Yeah. So yeah. I did like drawing Optimus Prime a lot, especially at the time, because once he started coming into the book and stuff, like I was like, wow, we get to have like the big guy in it, So I don't know. I tend to like the big iconic kind of characters like Soundwave and Shockwave, and I don't know. Like it comes and goes. I found Bumblebee to be a bit challenging because it was hard not to make his face too wide and toady looking like a toad or something. But I got better with that as it went on, I think.
I'm always curious who artists love drawing and who they don't like drawing like over and over. Like that this character has too many pieces to them. Why does John keep adding this damn character to every one of these stories? I'm so done drawing this character. What did you ever like go through that as an artist? You seem like a pro. And you both handle stress really well. Just from
I go through that
interactions.
When I do fill-in pages on like books with characters designed by Alex Milne, or if I do a commission of one of his characters. Even lately, I posted something online. It's like I should get a surcharge for this or something because his characters are so complex, and it's like you need an engineering degree to draw like Getaway or one of those kind of characters, Star Saber. But like. It's funny because like when you design your own characters, you kind of design them to your own strengths, so it's not that hard on you. I did enjoy drawing Thundercracker. Like he was based on Don Figueroa's design because to me, when he stayed on Earth, there was no reason he should have ever kind of reconfigured himself. So I wanted to make it, some continuity with the story. So I just kept the design that Don Figueroa had, and that design wasn't too bad. I kind of liked drawing that design. Buster was always a bit of a challenge because, like, especially when Josh was coloring it like a cell shaded kind of a thing, because it's like you want to have like that fur, but also draw it in a way where the colors are going to work with it and make it look like a dog. So Buster was kind of a challenge for me, but I love dogs, so that was also enjoyable. But
do you like drawing bots or humans more?
It's funny because like I tend to like drawing humans more, but I don't feel like that showed my Transformers work because I was always it took up so much time to draw the Transformers that I didn't really have time to focus on the people much because I knew that the fandom reading that was going to be looking at the characters and making sure they were drawn right. And I'm like, that's what I've really got to focus on. So like then I kind of just quickly draw the humans, but I'm pretty happy with how I've been drawing them in Signa and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I like variety. If I draw any one thing too much, I get bored of it. So, I like being able to mix it up.
Yeah, it's always it's like especially on something like Transformers. I think that's sort of a conundrum between the writer and the artist, where like left to my own devices, I would want to have a limited cast of like a handful of characters that you can really delve into in depth, and that would. I think just drive Andrew nuts if he had to draw the same.
That's why Andrew chose the comic with all of Cybertron and new Cybertronians coming back. Now that makes sense.
Well, ironically, John's book was kind of a smaller core cast rather than like a whole ship full of eccentric characters like the other book. So we did kind of focus more on like a handful of characters in a way. But I did have background characters to draw.
It was weird because the original, like originally seeing it, there was this, like before any of the books launched, there was this part of me that was like, I should probably be writing the one where they're off on a ship because I could put like 6 to 10 Transformers on the ship and be happy writing that, and that would be cool. And James should be the one writing the one where everybody else is there because he had a lot of characters that he wanted to bring in. Obviously, I mean, it worked out really well with James. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was planning with that. But there was like a growth that couldn't be stopped. And I feel like every Transformers writer or every Transformers relaunch tries to not do this. But it's like the X-Men, like Andrew was saying, like at a certain point, you have to deal with the fact that there's 150 characters that showed up in 1994. And each one of those 150 characters is somebody's absolute favorite character. And they really want to see it. And, well, you have to answer that question of where is that 150th character, where are they right now? And then the cast just grows and grows. So by the end of the run, I mean, it was like a cast of thousands to keep track of everybody. who was just one of the regular patrons in Blur's bar, who was who was on Earth, who was elsewhere.
Yeah, and some characters you don't even get to touch on again. Like earlier, the pitch that John mentioned that I had, it came from the thought of like Six Shot was like this super powerful robot that could like destroy a world, And then after the war ends and Megatron's gone and hanging off the Autobots and stuff, it's like, what is Six Shot doing? Like, where is this super powerful robot? What's he up to? So I had this idea that he was just like kind of like lost and aimless and just hanging out in like space bars. And this bounty hunter character, Devcon, who was in the G1 comics, like never showed up yet in IDW. I'm like, I pictured someone sent him off to find Six Shot and like make sure he's not up to bad stuff. But turns out he's just like this aimless guy in a bar, and they kind of end up going on an adventure together, pretty much. So that was kind of like me just coming out of like, what would Six Shot be doing in this new world where the war has ended, So yeah, there's just so many characters out there in the Transformers universe that like you might not even get to catch up with.
But you guys brought up a lot of, oh my gosh, there's so much I wanted to talk about that. I know I'm
not in a hurry, by the
way. I've been yelled at to go for dinner. But how does it feel to have like toys made of the characters? Like Metalhawk, for example, like characters that appeared in your comics, like Hasbro officially doing those. Was that, I assume, an idea from the comic that Hasbro was like, oh, this is cool, we'll make a toy of them? Or was there ever a time that they're like, hey, we're pushing for a new toy, can you all put them in the comic book?
The main time where that happened in terms of like actual characters and not designs was during Dark Cybertron, and that was specifically because we were packaging Dark Cybertron with certain figures.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple like really funny bits that come out of that, of like the wrong Tankor being in there at some point, that like just stuff that you probably wouldn't notice if you didn't have to live through it, of like, oh, we need a second Tankor. All right. But no offense if you're a Tankor fan, he was my favorite character to write. No, I'm just,
it's like, what, really? Okay.
Sometimes you'd get like, okay, one of the funny things is that we worked on Transformers for a very long time, and we worked on Transformers longer than most people at Hasbro worked on Transformers, so you kind of go through these like cycles of who was in charge of Transformers or what the philosophy was of Transformers. And every once in a while there'd be, okay, we got to have everything unified and it's got to be these same designs. And then every once in a while it would be like, well, we'll do many different versions and that'll be fine. So you kind of have to go through those ebbs and flows, or ebbs and cycles of that stuff. Sometimes there'd be a reason that they wanted to have a certain character design be featured. Probably less of that than you might think, but more of it on the art side than on the writing side, in terms of like more of it of like follow this design as opposed to use this character. Because the toy, I mean, the world where Transformers #1 is selling Transformers toys is long gone. Like that existed in 1984. That was not what the Transformers comics were designed to be in the 21st century. Even in the most cynical take on it, they were the most cynical take you could accurately have would be that like they're designed to make Transformers a lifestyle brand, not we're trying to sell a specific toy by putting this character in the comic book. You know what I mean? Like the
This was like, there was this one time in Starscream, just like he's talking to somebody, he just walks into a closet and he comes out, he's got a different outfit on, like a different design.
That was Dark Cybertron, 100%. Yeah. That's the one
Armada toy of Starscream.
Yeah. That's the one sort of weird example of that. But I think it's cool. I'm excited about the new the McFarlane page. What are they called? Page turners.
Oh yeah, that have the Marvel comic in the back. I think.
Well, they've got IDW comics. That was actually kind of cool. Is that they're going to have?
Oh, are they? I didn't know about those.
Oh yeah. No, they're not out yet.
That cover I have up on my wall. Like one of the only covers I kept the original art for actually has that comic cover on it, right? The Wheeljack one.
Yeah. So those ones are coming out, and I've actually been fiddling around with my Dark Knight one, but they're going to be like this size Transformers.
And they come with a comic.
Yeah, they come with. I think these each come with 2 toys and 2 comics.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. No, and I'm excited about that in 2024. Like it's definitely one of those, like, that's awesome that just what we were talking about before, that people still respond to this stuff. That idea that there's going to be new people walking into Target or whatever and picking up, robots in disguise. And
the answer to your question is, oh, sorry. I'll just
no, go ahead.
It's a really cool feeling to walk into like a Target or Walmart and see like a toy based on it's like that's Bumblebee. Obviously, it's got cues from the design I did for Robots in Disguise, for example, or something.
That has to be cool. Like, such a great feeling, right? This will be my last question. The Transformers toys that you're just talking about, does that mean that Hasbro owns the property of the IDW comics as well, then, that they can just reprint it?
Yes. Yep.
That's so weird. Oh, I mean, it must have been in the paperwork or whatever, the contract, right?
Oh yeah, no. Well, stories behind the story. When you go back to the early days of this stuff, like in the 80s, 70s or 80s, it was the Wild West in licensing, and that stuff was a lot of times not defined. The one I always remember, I don't know if I should be saying this, but there was a Marvel Comics X-Men character that was showing up during somebody's run, and then the Marvel lawyers were like, that character might not actually be owned by Marvel. They first appeared in a licensed book, so the very next issue of X-Men, that character wakes up dead. So there's weird stuff like that. At a certain point, Marvel and Hasbro cleared up all of the rights with the G.I. Joe and Transformers material that Marvel had created.
Mm-hmm.
The trademarks of all that stuff were always with Hasbro, but the ownership of the stories was less clear. All that got cleared up with G.I. Joe and Transformers, which is why you could have, like in the second G.I. Joe movie, there's a direct homage to Silent Interlude, the issue 21 of G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Conceivably, there could have been a universe where, even though Snake Eyes was owned by Hasbro, even though G.I. Joe was owned by Hasbro, that story was still owned by Marvel. The copyright of that story was still owned by Marvel. But that was cleared up. It's less clear with some of the other material, which is where you get into the trouble with Micronauts. Which again, I'm glad they've resolved, because there's a Micronauts, or they've resolved to the degree that they've resolved where they can put out a Micronauts compendium and a ROM compendium at Marvel.
Don't even get started on ROM.
Yeah, exactly. ROM. But the one exception to that is where you'd have Marvel characters, like actual Marvel characters, actually appearing in Transformers. So, like when Spider-Man shows up in Transformers #3, and when Circuit Breaker shows up throughout Transformers, because she originally appeared in Secret Wars 2. That's a different story, because that is still owned by Marvel, and that's going to have to be a thing that, well, that's Robert Kirkman's problem now.
I remember the first printings of the Transformers classics that they had shadowed out Circuit Breaker. They had left out issue 3.
Yeah.
And then I guess at one point, maybe during the Transformers Avengers crossover, they were like, hey, we just did this crossover. Can we reprint everything now? And there was another run of those trade paperbacks.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a huge Transformer fan with comics or the toys, so I appreciated that they were able to do it. Now they announced the classic Marvel stuff, the compendiums, and I don't know if that's the only way it's going to be printed. But Marvel's doing, the Omnis of Micronauts and ROM and Godzilla of the original Marvel years. Yeah. So it's really cool that these things, like you said, stuck in license hell for such a long time, especially with ROM, which there were 4 property owners of that toy, the robot and the toy. Oh my gosh. And IDW had it for a long time. Oh yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
some
Well,
stuff.
Marvel and Space Knight stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, because I remember talking about like the Micronaut stuff was like, again, that the original deal wasn't with Hasbro, right? Like Hasbro didn't own Micronauts in the 70s.
Right.
Eventually, they wound up owning Micronauts. But whatever paperwork existed from that stuff in the 1970s, I mean, good luck, right? It's the 21st century. Every company has gone through so many reorganizations. Nobody thought, what happens in 50 years when we want to reprint this? You know, that's on no one's mind in the 1970s. When we were doing the Micronaut series, it was like, okay, imagine it was like Superman, and you've got the rights to Superman, you've got the rights to Krypton, but somebody else owns Krypton exploded and Superman came to Earth as a baby. So you can't do that, right? You know, like, well, that's okay, you know.
So you had lots of limitations with the and
it also gets weird because again, I don't think this is like talking out of school, but Hasbro is a big licensee of Marvel and of Disney, and Avengers is more important to Hasbro than ROM is, right? So they're not going to push real hard on ROM if that's going to jeopardize Avengers, you know, like that's again, this isn't like some inside knowledge I have. This is just like, you don't want, like here you've got you need, these Avengers toys are big, you know, like you want these out there, and ROM is something that, you know, comic book fans remember, but like that toy was only in market for a few months, you know, the comic book was around for a decade, but I don't know, it all gets weird. But I'm super happy they worked out what they did. I remain friends with people at Hasbro and at Marvel, so I don't mean any, you know.
No. I don't think it comes across that way. It's just it does seem like it has taken so long to get these books out, but finally we're living in an age where collected editions can reprint the stuff that we lived through in our childhood. And if it is true that Hasbro can reprint those IDW things because it was a different contract than what they had with Marvel, then hell yes, I have contacts at Skybound. So I will let them know.
100% they can do that. I mean, I like genuinely, and I mean this with all respect to Skybound. Again, I'm friend, you know, like Arun Singh is one of the heads there. I mean, I've known him for years. I mean, I know Robert. I mean, I used to text Robert about Transformers stuff. You know, I know he's a big Transformers fan. I know, you know, I mean, I think they want to create their own identity with their Transformers energy.
Yeah,
I think they've done a really good job with it. I really enjoy that stuff myself. And you know, you don't want to lead off with these books that are the last guy's version of it. You want to have that, you know, you do want to have that gap,
which makes perfect sense, of course. Yeah.
And you also end up with that part where a lot of comic shops are still going to have the copies of these. You know, like you don't need a new copy of, you know, I'm excited for when they get to that reprint program because I'm confident they will. But you know, I understand why. That's not why it's not out the gate year one. You know.
Yeah. And I just wanted to. Well, I don't think
100% Hasbro has the rights to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you had been texting Robert and he's a fan of Transformers, then he knows how much just the fan base blew up with the Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, or the Hasbro Phase, whatever it's called. So, yeah, the last thing I wanted is these wonderful stories just to be forgotten because let's focus on the new stuff that we have. Oh, we're going to get the Marvel stuff. Let's do that. Yeah. But hopefully. Yeah, I mean, look how the Dreamwave stuff has just been. I mean, IDW did do a really good job of reprinting some of the early stuff.
Well, that got complicated for a different reason because there are people that didn't get paid for some of that.
Yeah,
right.
And that's a nightmare.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that there aren't files for. Like Hasbro has digital files for all of Transformers, you know what I mean? For all the IDW Transformers. You know, when we did the reprint of like the Jay Lee, John A. Reber, Transformers G.I. Joe crossover, like I called Jay and I'm like, Jay, did you get paid for this? Are you cool with us printing this? And he was like, no, but yes, or whatever, like it was something like that. I don't remember exactly what he said. I don't mean to put words in Jay's mouth. But we didn't have files for it. So you look at that. I mean, if you get a copy of that trade paperback, it's scanned from the book because no one has, the digital files are gone. Like those got deleted.
Jeez. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, with the Skybound stuff too, I hear a lot from fans about, like, they're kind of upset or disappointed that they're not using some of the people they're regularly seeing on the books, like as creators like myself, and John and James and whoever. But I'm always pointing that out, I'm like, they're starting their own new thing. They don't want to be seen as like just regurgitating the same stuff. So I'm like, who knows, maybe at some point they'll bring some of us in. But at this point, I totally get why they want to have new creators, create their own take on it.
Yeah.
So I try to point that out to people when they ask about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you had given me a list of comic creators working on Transformers, I don't think I would have put Daniel Warren Johnson on there. And I interviewed him. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't even know you were a fan of Transformers. And he had been working on the book silently for a while. And he was like, yeah, man. I was like, okay, that's really cool. Yeah. He's like into a bunch of different things, I think. But for some reason, I was like, Transformers and Daniel Warren Johnson. And then when I saw the first issue, because my wife loves the single issues, I was like, oh, this actually is pretty kick-ass. A lot different than, but you have to kind of do your own thing when you're starting over. Right. You guys went through that too.
Yeah.
We gotta be different than Dreamwave, and we gotta be different than Marvel, because people have seen that stuff. Let's do our own thing. And you did it, and you knocked it out of the park. And that's why we're still talking about it 14 years later after the fact.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, even within the IDW stuff, I think we all, James, Andrew, Alex, me, Margaret, Sarah, like we all wanted to do something different from what the other ones were doing at the same time, but also even from what like Simon or what Simon Furman had done, or what Mike Costa had done, or Shane McCarthy, and all the great art. I mean, well, a lot of the artists hopefully came back, but like it was no disrespect to EJ Sue or Don Figueroa if we took a different look to it. Mm-hmm. It was just trying to establish its own identity. So yeah.
Well, I remember even within Don's run, like when he changed up his style to look more like the Bayformers, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was an editorial mandate or not, or if it was like, hey, these robots are kind of cool. They look complex as hell.
That was before my time. I don't really know. I don't think it was a mandate.
I do know that like when I started RID, I kind of segued out of that a bit. I started out like looking more like his designs, and as it went along, I got more G1-y, and that was kind of intentional because I don't know. I like continuity and things. So like in my mind, it kind of made sense that they'd still have some of that mechanical element, but over time, I kind of like slowly got more G1-ish as people would expect to see it. At least that was my intention.
Yeah. Awesome.
Or not, but
I think I'm glad you did, because as a G1 fan, I was like, whoo, man, that was a little bit of a rough patch for those first like 6 issues, I think. Because I know I'm not the only one that was like, what happened to that G1 style we had there, Don? We agreed on that. So before we wrap up, tell me, remind people where they can find Signa, how much longer they can kickstart Signa, and where they can follow you both.
Yeah. Signa, if you go to Kickstarter, search for Kickstarter Signa, Signa. You'll find it. You can get any one of the tiers. You can also, if you're super rich and you just want to put $100,000 in there, you can do that. Like we're not going to stop you. Go ahead. No, but it's Sports Center. We have 16 days left in the campaign. We're funded, definitely happening. Now we're just trying to hit some more stretch goals. Got a print at I think if we get the next $1,000, I think unlocks a print, and then we have some more stuff coming up after that. And then I'm at I've been on social media a lot around this, but the John Barber on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn.
Thank you. You doing any shows, John, here in this upcoming year where people can come and get things signed?
Man, I almost had. I was very excited about a show I was going to do, but it overlapped with my son's first day of kindergarten. So I did not do it. So no, I'll be at San Diego Comic-Con for sure.
Okay.
we should have probably the plan is to have a panel talking Signa from Pug W with maybe some other robot creators. We'll see if that happens because panels are not locked in on San Diego Comic-Con yet. But yeah, it's probably the place to see me. Andrew does a lot more conventions though.
Okay. What about you, Andrew? Where can people follow you and find you? Not
my
physically.
project you can find in the same place you can find John's. So yeah, just go to Kickstarter and find Signa. It's got about 16 days to go. Before the end of it, I'll be at C2E2 in Chicago. So
hey, we're going to C2E2. I actually have a panel there, so I will be stopping by and saying hi. Sorry, Andrew. Sorry about that.
I'll see you there. That'd be great. I'll probably be pushing this on people because the campaign will just be wrapping up a little bit after that. So, I'll have a chance there to point it out to people. And then after that, my next show I think is I'm not sure if it's Basel, Switzerland. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Wow.
Fantasy Basel, which is like the biggest European comic convention on mainland Europe. And then I'm signed up for Dragon Con, and I'll probably do New York Comic Con. I'll probably do at least one TF Con this year. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, I'm still shaping up the second half of the year. But yeah, all my socials I try to go by Glove Studios or something similar to that. That was just like a name I had for doing freelance design stuff years ago, and I kind of kept it. So yeah, if you search my name in Transformers or search like Glove Studios, you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, if you do decide on a TF Con, Toronto.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that one. I'm thinking I might do that one. But the other one later in the year, I think it's in Baltimore, which is like an hour and a half for me. So I'll probably do that one. So,
That one's we were gonna go to that one. I think we have the we were gonna go to Japan, so we're missing out on that one. So I think
for the convention or to like Tokyo Comic Con or
no, just to go for vacation with
that's
just
show
my wife.
Yeah.
So you do Tokyo Comic Con?
I pretty much do that every year. So
that's awesome.
Except COVID, yeah. That's in usually it's in November. Last year it was in December.
Oh, okay, yeah, man, that must be great. Just to go to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just to go to a con in Tokyo and the fan base because of the things that you've done with Transformers. Yeah, what were you saying?
I'd love to get back over to TF Nation in England too. That's one that I'd love to get back over to. The big Transformers convention there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here, and thank you everybody for watching. Smash that like button on the way out. Don't forget to check out the Kickstarter, which again is in the description of the video, or if you were nice enough to watch this live, I did put it in the chat several times. And there it is one more time. That's it, everybody. Thank you for watching, and stay healthy and safe out there.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.